and then you go back, having had this experience. Is that something you subscribed to before?
I mean, yes, no. I mean, not. I was gonna say no. It's something obviously you're aware of those kind of ideas. But that's a general feeling anyway. I mean, ever since
It's just a theory, or it's something
yeah,
that is a
you know, it's
possibility.
something. Yeah, but it wasn't something I would be like, oh yeah, that's 100% what's going on. The feeling, like, I mean, it did genuinely shock me that like I was having this knowledge that this is what I'd seen, and like it was almost a bit creepy, you know. It was not what it's just not what I was expecting at all from having that, and I kind of think back to the experience as a child and how I don't think my brain, you know, despite being a massive science fiction fan my whole life and blah blah blah, I didn't clock that's what that was as a child. I was seeing this thing. I think my mother did, and I think whatever she experienced afterwards or during was something that she did not want to engage with. You know, and she was a very open person, and you know, whatever it was that she experienced, I'm guessing she must have done experienced something similar to me, where she had this alpha thought. She was just like, no, shut that down, don't want to know. It was like, it was almost, I find it reassuring now, in a way, like, if that's what it is, I'm like, okay, I'm not going to suddenly, you know, I think my partner sometimes worries I'm going to end up on a street corner with a sign saying, you know, this is what it is, like,
Yeah.
Nah, I just kind of go, okay, that's something, it's a possibility. It doesn't occupy my waking thoughts all the time. Like, you know, you go, oh yeah, that was something that happened.
Are you comfortable then, Alex, though, with that being where you're at with it? It's not something then that's compelled you to look into that more, explore it more. Obviously, you're at the point you're sharing it here, which is wonderful. And I no doubt there will be people listening having similar thoughts or experiences. There will be people listening thinking, this sounds utter nonsense, I can't buy into that. Because that's the nature of this topic. And unless some of these things, unless you experience them yourselves, it can be difficult to comprehend or process, or it's just not what you make of this topic. But do you think it's just something that you're happy to keep in isolation? It's an event, a sighting, it happened, and it's perhaps not transformed your life in any way, but it's just there?
Yeah, I think it's, I really hope there is other people who have experienced something similar to me. You see, I found it hard to talk about it, because this is wacky now. Like even though I'm massively into this kind of stuff, this is like, is this too far? And then it's kind of now like, I hope other people hear this and go, right, okay, that was what it was. I did experience that. It's fine. It reaffirms the notion that like this is way bigger than okay. I'm a fan of. Was very happy when we had Dr. Madden on, because I'm a big fan of his thought process about the whole thing. It's the whole the construct of this is, we see glimpses of it and we go, okay, that's what it is. We you know, the average person can never get their head around the whole thing, because you're not supposed to. Essentially, there's probably a whole mechanism and hierarchy. You know, I don't want to say government, but almost like a governmental process that might be going on with this whole thing that you have no clue. And even if it was shown everything, like, oh, here you go, this is how reality works. Like, what? No idea, sorry. And I would like to hope if some stuff was able to come out more over the coming years, decades, and I do feel we are being drip-fed. A certain number of people used to these ideas, and that will just happen. You know, the average person on the street doesn't understand quantum mechanics. They don't understand the fabric of space time, or how any of this is working. That's fine because they're going about their daily lives and work. But there are some people who have a passing interest in it. Let's have a little bit. There are some other people who study it and actually, bring forward more ideas around these concepts. So I think that's what will happen eventually with this whole topic, is that some people have a baseline understanding of like, oh yeah, we know this thing exists. Do I have any interest in it? No. And some people do take an interest in it, and some people eventually who are already studying it, are allowed to just get on with it,
To be fair, Alex, I think your average person on the street doesn't understand how the movie Inception works. So, that's, no doubt there will be people listening to this going, "Yeah, that's me." So apologies if that's hit you hard, but email me and I'll explain it to you. It's not difficult. But here's a bit of a brain dump for you. So I just spoke to Diana Pasulka yesterday.
Yes.
And we were talking about the Jake Barber Skywatcher group, which is dividing opinion. I've seen a lot of folks really excited to see what they might bring out, and I've seen other folks refer to it disparagingly as Skywatcher Ranch, giving it a little bit of Skinwalker Ranchy type vibes and stuff, and they're being dismissive of it. And I think all is fair at the moment until anything is on the table. But obviously the big call out from these folks involved are that they can summon potentially, and I said to Diana they can summon a craft. What's your opinion on that? And she said, well, let's call it a craft, but we don't know what these are. And what if, let's just use your experience and your thoughts, and what if it's akin to using a Ouija board and breaking through to whatever the afterlife is, and contacting something else or some other realm or plane, spiritual plane. And when you use quote-unquote psionics or CE5, you're kind of using whatever your soul is or that consciousness to reach out to that other side. And maybe you're not seeing a craft like Diana says. Maybe you're almost touching the afterlife. I know that goes way into the details or off the reservation, but perhaps that's an element of it. And you know what? You can't summon a craft and bring it down to sit next to you, but you can just bring whatever this thing is into our kind of realm of existence for a moment to be like, there's a connection there, and maybe that's all it is.
I mean, I was very interested in Diana's work from the get-go, really, because it was like there's such a different angle, but it makes so much sense. And that's what I think that's the only thing I could link back to say what I experienced. The grounding might have come from a bit of that, where it's like, it has these links going back thousands of years, and that's how we built religion around this thing to understand what it was. But it's this kind of fleeting moment all the time, and again goes back to the control mechanism from Valet, and it's always the edge, the edge of our reality, and it could be collectively, a large enough amount of people across the planet all decided we want to will this into existence. That's another thing that I do think about since, and it's kind of we're transforming what would have been the major religion's faith into this new belief system to then move forward with something else. But I'm still on the fence about Barber. I find it so, and that's so weird because of all the stuff that we've been through and heard from and blah blah blah. To then have this guy come along and say, yeah, I've done it.
Well, that's actually what that's what I want to finish on, because I've got, as part of this ramble, I've gone through and asked people online and on the Discord or on X, what are your thoughts on this Skywatcher group and what's claiming, what it can achieve? What do you think is what's the likelihood that what's the kind of best case scenario for you?
Oh my word! I just want to see. I found it interesting that Rush is involved. You know, this recent thing, and it's like, are we just gonna? Is it one of those things where we see what we want to see, or is it gonna be something that's like, okay, you can't deny that, like, but then we've had this again and again. Is it always gonna be this? They're just slicing off more people to the you can't deny that camp until it just tips over, and you know, the consensus is you cannot deny this anymore, whatever way, whatever shape or form that takes. But again, yeah, it's heavy fence sitting, heavy fence sitting.
My issue with it is and I'm going to argue my own argument here. I think that there's an element of, well, if you can summon even one of these things to appear in the sky, you know, get News Nation is the network right now, which is a burgeoning network. It's not one of the major networks, but it's, you know, it's gaining traction from what I can see, and it gets a lot of hits on its UFO stories, particularly through Ross Coulthart. Get a camera out there and live stream it. You know, here we are with Jake Barber, Skywatcher, and we're going to see them use psionics and summon one of these craft now. That will get people's attention, but then you have a moment that you can win people over by doing it, or you don't win them over because it doesn't happen. But then would there be an argument of that's not how it works? Which I suppose, like your story, Alex, like so many other folks like mine, right now, give me the evidence of it.
Yeah, 100%. And like, I'm gonna use my brother-in-law is raising this to you in terms of like there's no footage that would convince me. Because he always argues the point, like in the age of AI that when it is now, how much has been done in the last year? It's not out of control, but it's quite shocking. Right? So we can't rely on that anymore. So what can we rely on? Okay, first-hand witness, like statements, but then again, that's just you have to me. Unless you experience.
Do you know the other issue with the Skywatcher stuff, and this probably goes in their favour, and this would get a little bit, I suppose, apologist for keeping this a secret. If they are in an area, which it sounds like, where there's a no-fly zone, and you can't just take anyone out to it, and it's a military or private contractor area, then you can't just take a news crew out.
Yeah.
But then also, does that start to raise the question? People may look at that skeptically and go, well, yeah, nonsense, you can't prove it, you're just making, you know, you're putting up barriers. But is there then a reason that in certain places these things are more likely to be summoned or appear? And that's why you have these huge areas cordoned off by the military.
Literally going to say, pardon the pun, it's chicken and egg.
Yeah.
Did they set those places up because these things are happening? Or exactly, were they like, or were these things coming there because they set those places up?
Yeah.
So, you know, again, it's like managed. Kevin
Costner, Field of Dreams. If you build it, it will come. Yeah.
Exactly. Oh, I hadn't thought it that way around as well. Yeah, it was like so. Yeah, and that links back into giving more credence to the team that people to do these things. Like, yeah, and I think I think they can only go along so much more before a lot of people are going to go, that's enough. Like, literally, you know, you have to admit to it. Or just give us something, give us some vague little snippet and just go, there you go. And that will just shut down a large amount of people, but then the real stuff is to come on.
Do not discount people's stubbornness, willful ignorance. You know, ignorance is bliss. They're happy to not know, I think, en masse. And again, it's one of those, I've talked about this before, and we'll kind of finish up here. If you asked even like the most hardened people interested in this subject, you know, the folks who bang on about, yeah, I just want to know everything. I bet if you took those people one at a time into a room and you said to them, I can tell you everything that we know about the UFO topic, even the really scary stuff. But afterwards, you can take this pill and forget it. I wonder, and I think a large percentage of before you take the pills and be like, I wish I didn't do that.
I think I've often thought about that kind of a similar kind of scenario, and I think I'd be, I don't know, I think I might be one of them as well. Because it'd be like,
I would be the same, mate.
Yeah.
I'm not going to sit here and go, yeah, I would know everything and be quite happy to go, yeah,
Yeah.
that's great, I know. It would probably be terrifying, and
Yeah.
it would shake you to the point of, am I better just not knowing that? You're in the Matrix, plug me back in,
Yeah.
I want to eat the steak, you
Yeah.
know, I just want to, you know, Cypher was the dude, wasn't he?
Yeah.
Who goes to the restaurant, ignorance is bliss, yeah,
Easy.
plug me back in, I don't want to know, make me rich, and I'll happily live out this existence and whatever kind of hope you want to buy me. But yeah, listen, Alex, thank you so much for joining us on the pod today. I'd love to
That's
get you
fine.
back on as well. What I would
amazing,
like
yeah.
is, do you still have the drawing of the object?
Yes, I do. I found it was knocking about the other day actually.
Can you send me a
I
little
will-
picture of that?
yes, I'll get that for you, mate. Yeah.
And I will try and stick it on the thumbnail for
I might, because I was going to do like a nicer one.
you. Go with
I
the
might.
original.
I go with the original. It was done
Yeah.
then, but yeah. Okay, go on then.
What I don't want is some Disney-fied drawing now, you know,
Yeah, yeah.
beautiful illustration, coloured in, you know,
It was-
signed with your business address in the bottom.
Yeah,
you know.
it's like, here you go. There's a call now.
Go with the original, that's always the
Yeah.
best.
Yeah, I'll do that. Yeah.
Otherwise, you're doing what George Lucas done to Star Wars. So yeah, there we
No,
go.
I don't want to be that guy.
Yeah, don't be George Lucas. Right, thanks very much, Alex. Nice speaking to
Nice
you.
one, dude. Yeah.
Joining me now on the line, I've got Ben all the way out in Ireland. Ben, welcome.
Hi Andy, what's up?
I am good, and warning folks, you have a Scotsman and an Irishman. We are 2/3 of the way into our show. Best of luck.
If both of us walk
understanding
into a
this,
bar, you're in trouble.
yeah, good chance as well. So, but listen, you're in a friendly bar here. Let's put it that way. What is it you want to talk about today? The floor is yours, Ben.
Honestly, I wanted to talk on abductions because it seems like that's coming up a lot recently from John Blish, from everybody. Just seems to have a little bit of an abduction angle recently. Even Jacques Vallée recently talking about his own experience. It's coming up in different ways to me, and I just wanted to see where people are at. Because last week was, or the week before, or time flies, was the abduction kind of segment, and it just kind of spurred on a lot of stuff. And I just wanted to have a kind of a breakdown on it and see what's going on in the world of abductions, because people seem to stray far away from it most of the time. Not nowadays.
It's really strange because it's one of those things people get in touch with, or I see online, and the comments are, why don't abductions happen anymore? And it's almost
Yeah.
like it's like an old school 70s, 80s, 90s thing that happened with UFOs and it just stopped. But I don't think that is the case, and for me it seems to be that it's perhaps as the conversation has, I don't know if evolved is a fair word, but changed and got a little bit more scientific and a little bit more political. There's just been certain aspects of the conversation that have had to be pulled back on, and I think abduction's just been one of them.
Yeah, honestly, it's because it got a bad rap, abductions, from people who claim to be abducted and all these different kind of angles that people took on it, and it was portrayed very often in media too. So you kind of get that, like, oh, it's slightly comedic, oh, it's slightly fictional. And when people think of abductions, they think of a big flying saucer with a big beam coming down and hovering you over in green light, and it just makes it all comical to people. But then there's the very serious side of abductions, like even looking at Terry Lovelace, where he's got implants in his legs, supposedly. These little tiny things, little oh, what was it? It's like the doctor said it was like not bone marrow or something, but it had a weird density, a little flower. It's like where you start looking and going, oh, what's actually going on here? Because in Lovelace's case, he was a Vermont lawyer and a prosecutor for the state. He's not the sort of person who would go, oh yeah, like this weird thing happened to me years ago for fun. He didn't seem like the type anyway. So
It's an odd thing to make up at that level as well. You talk about like the Whitley Strieber's obviously one of the classic cases that people know about because of how well Whitley wrote about his experience. But then very quickly, South Park's first episode is Cartman gets an anal probe, which is it's joking about Whitley Strieber's abduction experience, the beings, you know, and it's you're talking about something like you say that's really serious. And Whitley talks about, you know, essentially being raped and sodomized, and
Literally.
seems to be. I've talked about this with a few guests, and it's one of the last things in our society as it teeters on the brink of whatever collapse, destruction, whatever we're doing, where you're not allowed to joke about anything anymore. Not that you should joke about certain things, but that seems to be rape is a big no-no as a joke. However, if someone comes out and says it was a UFO experience, then that seems still to be publicly focal. Oh, they've got issues. Yeah, that's nonsense. So there's still that
100%.
barrier up to it, and I can see why. For example, the Sol Foundation, one of the talking points one of the year before, I can't remember, where Whitley Strieber attended and was meant to talk, but basically they
I think it was the year
decided
before.
to stay
But
away.
yeah,
They stayed away
Yeah.
from it, and I can understand why at this point. And we had this chat. I had this chat with Kelly Chase recently as well around the whole experiencer thing. I think there are platforms for those conversations. I know that happen. Where I can judge them, all take these things at face value. But I do understand where from a mainstream point of view, there are so many aspects of the conversation right now that you just have to believe. And I use the example, this is probably going out a few weeks after we record this, mate, but last week, so early February, I was on a podcast with two friends, and their podcast is pop culture and stuff, having a bit of a laugh, but they wanted to catch up on UFOs. Neither of them particularly believed. One of them far more skeptical than the other, and I sent them the Jake Barber News Nation piece, which they basically, when we talked about it, they were like, it was interesting enough for the first 10 minutes hearing about the guy with the UFO, some red flags around just that whole idea, but as soon as he mentioned the experience and divine femininity, the emotion of it, they were like, nah, psionics, no, total red flags for them.
Yep.
For them, it was the tap out moment came quite early on, and I thought that's your general public. So again, when folks online are like, everyone's ready for this conversation, no, you can't categorically say that because everyone is not ready. At least there's two guys who are sitting
100%.
there going, nah, not a chance. And they don't care about credibility, the military background, who will speak, what they're saying, when they're saying it. For them, just the idea of UFOs being picked up and retrieved is starting to waver their interest. Psionics, all that stuff, telepathy, experiences, for them, total nonsense. And
it's very difficult because it's the general rule that people talk about all this side of stuff, but where it kind of blends into getting into parascience and all these different kind of like avenues. But even for the Jake Barber interview, I showed my mother the same interview. She's got a vague interest in UFO. She kind of listens to me shite on about it more than anything. But she had a listen, and she actually, at the part where he starts talking about his religious style experience with a goddess, so she was interested. But even as somebody who has an interest in the spiritual side, does Reiki classes and things like that, it still didn't really grab her enough to go, oh yeah, I believe, despite the background, despite all this stuff. And for people in the UFO community who are latching on to people who say these sort of things in different ways, whereas Barber might come out and say, oh, this is a religious experience, and people say, oh, that's good, I now have confirmation. It's becoming very intertwined and kind of very scary to say, oh, this is an abduction or this isn't an abduction, because people take it in very strange ways when you start describing them. Either they can jump at you or they can start jumping for you, and it's getting even my own experience. I don't know what happened in my own personal experience, but if I start latching onto someone and some ideal or some avenue of thought, like I say, it's a religious thing, then I can easily be led very astray into some weird worlds. And it's scary. It's scary to try and find confirmation of something and have 50 people tell you different answers, and then the other 50 people say that you're a nutcase and you're medically unable and you need help. And where does anybody come out nowadays with that?
Are you comfortable talking about any of your own experience?
Yeah. For me, it's weird because this kind of was spurred off by finding the info in a different podcast or a book or something. But I had experiences first as a kid with the Hatman, which I didn't know was a thing, a shared experience until kind of recently, a few years ago. And I was like, oh, that's its own kind of shadow people and all these things. And I did a bit of research. I was like, yeah, cool, okay, that's its own thing. But then I've only recently started reading Terry Lovelace's incident in Devil's Den, and his experience in his room with his nightmares and his childhood experiences they really struck a vibe with me. It was him being grabbed by many hands. That was what really got me, because in my nightmares, which do you call them nightmares? Are they nightmares? I don't know. But taking it that way, if my Ant-Man nightmares were those things, and they mirror Terry Lovelace's incident, and then the rest of my life was followed by seeing weird UFOs, having weird experiences. If I was to sum it all up, it looks like a summary of Terry's own life. Yeah. But then do I start going, oh, okay, well, that's obviously an abduction then. Oh, I was obviously abducted. Like, oh, yeah. You can easily connect the dots, but it's dangerous to start doing it and start making assumptions. And that's where I'm in the case nowadays looking at John Fish say, oh, well, the abduction scenario is the real reason for the secrecy. And that's genuinely, that's the scariest possible outcome. Like, I can't think of anything scarier than, oh, they do actually come down and take us and have full control. I think we can do nothing about it. That sounds awful. But what other avenue can you take it at the moment? Because so many people are coming at so many different weird kind of thoughts on it. And my own experience adding up that way, how do I reconcile that? I don't know if that made sense, but did it?
No, it does. Like, even with those kind of experiences, do you have a red line of what you're willing to go into in terms of a UFO conversation, and what you're willing to consume, whether it's on a podcast, a book? Is there something you're reading? For me, that's the line. Anything over
kind of, yeah. I didn't think I did, but I kind of do, yeah. Like, the second it starts getting into Jesus, that's okay, fair enough. That's one angle I've seen people go on, where these sort of visitations are angels and stuff like that. Like, okay, fair enough, but it's not my base of knowledge, so I don't generally go that way. But I can go with psionics, and I can kind of run with that sort of thing in now in modern times, but I'm somebody in this community, so does that have much value in that sense? I believe all that stuff anyway, in that kind of general sense. I have a little bit of faith in it. It's hard to say there's a literal cutoff, but when it starts getting into the kind of mystical, I don't even know how to describe it, that kind of where it's really pseudoscience. It really is just like, oh, you have to believe with all your heart that this is the truth to really make it happen. It's like, okay, like, I'll put it this way, I think CE5 probably has something to it in that sense, where maybe you can't spiritually, physically reach out with a soul, or the same way remote viewing works, maybe that sort of stuff seems to be real, and I believe that. But anything beyond that, where you maybe like try and influence people through your mind, or the quantum field of mental thoughts of the world and all these sort of concepts there, I start getting lost on that 100%. And that's, like, I'm an experiencer and a believer and all these things, and I'm still lost on that. So I can only imagine how the general public, as you say, would react to that being fact.
Yeah, I even when it comes to abductions, it's funny, I have an easier time believing the horrible ones than I do the positive ones. The idea that someone would be taken on board a craft and experimented on, I can believe. More than someone being taken on board a craft, flown to another galaxy, or taken to some other dimension and shown all these planets. I start really that for me is a real stretch, because I suppose it's almost a hierarchy thing where I can believe a more intelligent species, or even a species that sees itself as above us, which they probably are, definitively, and they're where they are as a species. They would experiment on us because it's what we as a species have done on this planet, not only to animals but to other humans. That's still now, it's disgusting. But then the idea that, Ben, no offence, but you get picked up in the middle of a field one day out in Ireland having a nice sunny walk, and you're taken to a far off galaxy, and who is Ben? Why are you special to be shown this other race's planet? And that doesn't make sense to me, but it does make sense to the horrible. Maybe that's a human thing for me and my kind of bias. It's not right, but it's not wrong.
No, I totally get you. I totally get you. You know, Betty Hill's case of where she does her hypnosis and then she starts getting, I do a star map and they're from Zeta Reticuli and all this sort of stuff. I might be conflating that with another case, but I think that's what it is. With Betty and Barney, I listened to the hypnosis tapes they had and I genuinely start really feeling that sounds real. But then those sort of details, you're exactly right. Those details where like they're telling Betty, oh, here's where we're from. We're just having like just a casual telepathic chat on the ship with people who have looked at you like, yeah, hi, what's up? Oh, it's nice to meet you. That really does lose me, and it sounds silly and it is biased, but it's very hard to follow along believably from there because you kind of go, again, who is Betty Hill to these people? Why does she get to be shown all these things in space and told about the future and all this stuff? Yeah. Not that I don't believe her, but it's hard as just a person to go, yeah, that sounds 100% truthful, because it doesn't make, like you say, I don't think a species above us in that sense gives that much of a shit. Why do they care that much? I don't think they would to sit for memories after. It sounds like a waste of time for a very pragmatic sounding species.
Yeah, I've really come away. Yeah, I've really come away from any one person needing, I suppose, in a way to be 100% correct, accurate, potentially even truthful. And I don't just mean that someone's lying, but for example, I've said before, I believe Chris Bledsoe did have an experience, but I also believe that last week he filmed the space station flying past the moon. So
yeah.
Because people coordinated, he lives here, the space station at that time was flying past the moon. Chris Bledsoe has put a video up of a light flying past the moon. And does that detract from Chris Bledsoe's story? For some people it will. However, I believe he still had an initial experience. I think from there you have to kind of discern yourself at what point do you kind of cut off. Where is your red line for each individual's kind of story and take narrative? People's narratives can change themselves, their opinions, what someone believes as opposed to what they know. That can, over time, especially over decades, that can bleed into being something similar. I think we've all done it. I've got memories at school of scoring goals, playing football with my mates during my lunch break. But the way I remember it isn't necessarily as far out as it was and as good as it was. Actually, did that one go in, or did I miss? I remember it going in. These things start to bleed into all kind of different ways, the way memory works. And I could well believe if a subject as crazy and wild as this can swing, that happens with individuals and entities. So that's where I'm always happy for folks to say, you know, I've always said, listen to everyone's kind of story, listen to their opinion, listen to narratives, but you have to make up your own mind as to where you sit. And I want to ask you, Ben, how do you see a way to get the abduction conversation or experiencer conversation into the mainstream which doesn't turn people off?
Oh, that's a bloody hard one, honestly. It's at the moment it's hard to approach it for most people, even in the UFO community. So I don't really know a perfect way to start making it normal, to normalize it and make it sound like it's a legitimate, constant thing. It's a very scary prospect for most people, myself included. I don't really want it. I don't know if I want to know that it's completely confirmed. But I don't really see another way to get people to talk about the topic, whether they believe it or not. They kind of go off when people start saying, "Oh, I was abducted," or "I spoke to aliens." Even John Blish is one where he's very well credentialed. He's saying, "Oh, I met some guy in a van, in a big truck in the middle of a forest." It's like, that sounds very strange, and it mirrors a lot of cases. But is it going to move a needle forward for people to the point that they go, "Okay, well, this is definitely real," if even he is still not believed, or Lovelace isn't believed, and all this? So I don't really know. I honestly don't know what would make the abduction phenomenon become something that we commonly talk about, casually talk about in that sense.
Do you think then it's got to be a slow build to it still? Because it's a bit like building a house but trying to start with the roof before you've built the foundation. You know? I
think so, yeah. It might be a case that you really have to reconfirm that there is a phenomenon here for people, very black and white, where before you can start talking about what the phenomenon does.
Yeah. I want to ask you just a final question, Ben, before we wrap up. Because you've taken up too much of my time now. Before we wrap up, how do you foresee 2025 playing out? Because already we have had whistleblowers coming forward, videos of eggs on the news. We've got Jake Barber's Skywatcher organisation about to drop data. Apparently, by the time this goes out, that may even have come out. We have Age of Disclosure documentary on the horizon, which people are claiming is going to move the needle. We've got a task force which is out there to try and break open 9/11, COVID, the Epstein files, Martin Luther King, JFK, Bin Laden killing, and UFOs.
People at home won't be able to see me rolling my eyes at that one, I will be honest. But yeah, honestly, 2025 looks absolutely chaotic. I don't know how you're going to keep up with it, man, honest to God, because it looks like there's about 10 different angles that people are coming from in different camps for different types of disclosure, and it's really hard to keep up with. You've got people, you've got like the Age of Disclosure for one. Looks like it's the biggest star-studded cast for the entire UFO community. You've got Jay Stratton coming out and saying, I've seen this, that, and this and that. But then Skywatch is going to do it on its own, but then Trump's government's going to do it on its own, which are laughable at the moment, but we'll see how it all goes. I don't know. I haven't a clue where any of this might end up, but you can see my belief in certain angles here. But I don't know. Honest to God, I think by the end of the year we're going to have something, but I don't know whether everybody's going to be unified on it.
No, I don't think people will be unified anyway, because even if we get some kind of official disclosure, I think there will be lots of different camps. And I just spoke today with Jack Riley about this literally minutes ago, where even he said disclosure might not be what we think, and he believes disclosure will fracture people. And I could totally believe that you would have people who are all welcoming, and I for one welcome our new overlord